This is Barbara Oswald, founder of the Tega Cay Community School. She was one of the first residents of Tega Cay, and she's Tega Cay starting in about 1970, and she started a school, a Christian school with Tega Cay shortly after Tega Cay started to be built. Now, Barbara, would you tell me the circumstances which caused you to start the preschool?
Well, back in 1972, a friend called and had a 3-year-old daughter who wanted to have her in a preschool, but there was no school closer than Rock Hill or up in Charlotte. And she asked me if I would just help her get a little school started, and because we had some area where the stable at Tega Cay was, some land, we said yes, we would do a little school.
For some of those who aren't familiar with the stable was outside of what is now the main gate.
Exactly.
The big gate.
Right,
yes.
Right. And there was literally a chicken coop there, a 2-room area, a little abandoned building that chickens had been raised in, and we took that building, and about 3 of us women and our husbands and some of the people in the community who were living here at the time, we painted walls and added walls to make new rooms, and we literally took an abandoned chicken coop and made a little 2-room school out of it.
I understand that the size of this chicken coop was something like 30 feet by maybe 15 feet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very, very small. But we didn't have many children then. I think we had maybe 14 children, and there were 2 teachers, myself and one other, at the time.
Mm-hmm. Now, there was a great need for this. What caused you to realize there was a need for something like this?
Well, the parents in the area were having to drive a long distance to get their children into a school, and like I say, Tega Cay was very young and didn't have a school at that point, and this was just a beginning to answer the needs of the parents in the community, the young parents with young children.
Mm-hmm. Where did you get your curriculum and your books and things like that?
We had to depend on used curriculum and furniture and everything from the schools that were renovating in the Fort Mill district. At that time, Riverview Elementary School was renovating, and so they gave us some books and some furniture.
Mm-hmm. And so would you tell me again the numbers of children you started out with, and how you split them up into this chicken coop?
Yeah. We had, like I say, 2 rooms in this area, and we had 5-year-olds in one side and 3- and 4-year-olds in the other room. And there was no kindergarten, no public kindergarten in Fort Mill at this time. It was not a required grade level for children. So
Mm-hmm.
we just took 3-, and 4-, and 5-year-olds at this time.
Mm-hmm. And so this went on for a number of years, and then what happened?
Actually, in 1976, I moved away from the area for less than a year, and while I was away and was planning to return to Tega Cay, I did get a call and was asked if I would bring the school back, because the school had shut down in the time that I was gone. No one picked it up and carried the ball, so to speak. So in 1977, when I returned to Tega Cay after an absence of about 9 months, we were asked by the pastor of the church, what is now the community church, was called the Church of Today at that time, and we were invited to come down and be located in that church down there.
What sort of a staff did you have at this time when you moved?
Very small staff. We had myself and one other person running the school, and then of course we got a couple of helpers during the year, but at that time it was just Wendy Havner and me running the 3 and 4, yeah, that's all we had, 3 and 4-year-olds at that time.
And then as time went on, you expanded a little bit. Could you just describe the expansion of the school?
Yes, at that point we really began to grow because the community was growing, and there were quite a few children moving in, families who had heard of the school. Word of mouth has always been our best advertising, and they would ask to have their children in the school, and by that time we were using every available room in the church and sharing a space right next to the pastor's office, and out in the kitchen area. We were really full, so to speak, but the community church at that time did not have another building, and it was not until 1989 that they built the present education building.
As I understand it, that at that time you were using the space which is now a breakfast room, kitchen, and a couple of offices, right. And that was the whole space that was available not only for you, but for the pastor and the secretary too.
Exactly. We were all one big group, and I think they were very patient to put up with us so much, but they loved it and they supported the school. But I think they also were very willing and glad when a new building was under construction.
And tell me about moving into the new building. This was in 89?
In 1989, in January of 89, the present 2-story education building was finished, and we moved into it. That we felt like we were just in a lot of space because we only had about 65 students at that time, ages 3 and 4. So it gave us a lot of room to grow, and that's just what we did. We began to grow very large and very quickly, adding more classrooms of those ages, and we also, in September of 89, began a kindergarten, full-day kindergarten program, because at the time there was no required kindergarten or full-day program in Fort Mill, in the area.
Okay, so then you had moved in, and you had a total, you expanded considerably as time went on.
Very much.
And so today, how many students do you have?
Today we have approximately, I think, 165 students, 14 classrooms, about 25 teachers, and we have 1-year-olds through 4-year-olds for preschool, and we have kindergartners. And this year, for the first time, 1998-99 school year, we began our first year for first grade.
What is your vision for the future?
Oh, it's big. It's to grow a grade a year, and we are expecting and will have 2nd grade for next school year, with plans to go through eventually the 12th grade for the community.
Of course, you're going to have some sort of a building program in order to accommodate, but that's understandable.
Yeah.
And it'll take time, I suppose.
It will, and we will eventually achieve that. I don't really know at this point where that will be or how it will be, but we'll keep stretching the building as much as we can and growing and trying to meet the needs of the community. We did have at one time the after-school program, which took care of the children from the elementary and primary schools in Fort Mill, as well as our own school system. We hope to start that up again and just indeed have more to offer the community as the community grows itself.
Barbara, you provided a great service to the community of Tega Cay and the communities around too. And you'll be complimented for this, and good luck for the future.
Thank you, and I just appreciate the opportunity to share this.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
This is Larry Harper, who is chairman of the Planning Commission, and up to recently it was the Planning and Zoning Commission of Tega Cay. He's been in Tega Cay since 1991, and he's been on the Planning Zoning Commission since '92. Larry, when you first got on the Planning and Zoning Commission, what were some of the things that you were involved in?
Well, I'd say
Ordinances?
back then, yeah, we did a lot of ordinance revisions that have been piling up over the previous years prior to '92, really. They were concerned with the issues of the city, with if the administrator was having problems with a particular ordinance, the way it was written, or a developer had some, or a neighbor had a complaint generally, or it could be just a slew of issues that were brought before us, and they had compiled a list, and that's what struck me, because we were working off a document that was about 10 or 12 pages of ordinances, different topics really, and we took them one at a time and tried to go through them and revise them to meet the needs of the council and the administrator and the neighbors and please everybody in the community. It was kind of a low-key duty, you might say. It was a very relaxed atmosphere and kind of enjoyable.
So you were updating the existing ordinances, and you had the list, and you were going down, so it was a sort of a housekeeping thing that you were doing as far as Planning and Zoning Commission. You had a zoning ordinance in effect at this time, didn't you?
Right, yeah, it's become a little more structured today than it was back then, but basically there was a master plan that had been adopted prior to my involvement, and what that master plan was it was actually a written narrative of what was expected in the growth of Tega Cay, what the zoning categories and designations would be throughout the city as it developed from one end of Tega Cay to the next, and that was all documented. There wasn't a lot of formality there, by the way. In fact, the zoning map the official zoning map was one that hung in City Hall, and still there. I think it's still there today.
Yeah. I was looking at it today, as a matter of fact. I was in there. Wasn't there a zoning ordinance that the city administrator was telling me about the difficulty they had in finally getting the zoning ordinance? I believe there was one that went through in about '89. You used that, didn't you? That was part of the plan of development?
In '89?
In '89, there was or thereabouts, towards the end of the '80s, and maybe it was the early '90s. But anyway, there wasn't a zoning ordinance, wasn't there?
Well, it was just structures of Planning and Zoning Commission, and basically there was a map, and there were ordinances written that tied that map to specific designations and the functions of the city. What took place after that point in time, or after '92, was really in '94, when they passed the planning. South Carolina passed the Planning and Enabling Act.
I see.
It's hard to say. We've said that so many times.
Yeah. And so So this gave you things that you had to comply with as far as the state was concerned, is that right?
Absolutely. The purpose of the Planning and Enabling Act of 1994, I believe it was really to provide cohesion for the state. In other words, the counties, municipalities, cities, and townships really were at handling planning issues in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no structured approach to how that would take place or how it would be recorded or and that sort of thing. And what they tried to do to implement this act is to get all of these groups and all these counties and part of cities and as function of the state as a whole to structure their process in one direction. And the things that it brought about were basically it changed the function of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It separated it. It allowed you to set the zoning and record that, and then that became a separate function. So like today, which just occurred recently with the passage of our last requirement for that act, we're now just strictly involved in the planning side of it. But it's kind of a complicated thing because it took really they gave us 4 years, I think, to comply, 4 or 5 years to comply, the city to comply.
Yes.
And I think the deadline was May of this year, and we were, or May, anyway, we finished probably four months prior to that deadline.
Yes.
And,
So now you're purely a planning commission, and who performs the function of in zoning now? I mean, if a zoning issue comes up, where does it go?
well, zoning issues now are handled by the Board of Zoning Appeals, title. And the way that kind of works is that if in trying to comply with the ordinance as written, the citizens have a right to appeal it. And so therefore, if it's undue hardship or it adds a detriment to the community as a whole, or there's other reasons, they can come before the Board of Appeals and gain relief to allow them to do certain things. For example, like adding onto a house, building a deck, or encroachment on offset limits or easements or some other avenue.
So they have to have some sort of a hardship then in order to convince the Board of Appeals, I suppose.
That's one way, or the public good of the community is not affected. If they can't randomly, the board can't randomly grant variances, and sometimes they do for conditional use or certain circumstances. But basically, it is to help gain relief from, because you can't cover every situation in the law.
Sure.
Now, the planning side of it, which is what we handled, involved a lot of things. We have 7 basic elements. I think they're involved like historical preservation, community spaces, transportation, safety, education. I think there's 7 basic elements that we had to incorporate in this overall development plan. And what we did was we hired a planner, Judy Simac, in the beginning to help us go through this process, and it was a systematic process. But we actually had to write or produce. This is what I thought was rather strange. Is we actually had to write an ordinance that allowed us to do these things.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember going through council to pass that before we could even do the rest of the parts
And
of it.
then the other ordinances had to be approved too.
Right. There was a zoning. We had to have the zoning map updated, which was the old master plan map updated. And at the same time, the thing that made it even more difficult was the fact that the recent development, Newland, Carolina, came forward. And this was, of course, after Steve Mudge's group failed in their efforts to develop here at Tega Cay. And so we had 2 functions really. One side of us was trying to meet the criteria of that Enabling Act.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, we were dealing with issues on this new development, and that was interesting.
So you have, in addition to the basic plan of development for Tega Cay, you had the development agreement you started to work on, is that right?
Absolutely. One of the, in fact, we had in our ordinances a specific category which is called a PUD. It's Planned Unit Development. And that is exactly what this particular developer wanted to use. The function of it is to gain flexibility in working with the city in exchange for things. In other words, he would dedicate certain portions of land for open space. He would dedicate for amenities like we've got community activity space. We've got walking trails. We've got preservation of land. The ball fields we're trying to build. So in doing that, we could have some flexibility, you might say, in helping him develop the property, knowing the terrain, the topography, and all the conditions around the water and sewer, and general planning that goes in with making a development of the size. I mean, because we're talking a third of the size of Tega Cay.
Yeah, so it really was a trade-off. I mean, because of the terrain and so forth, it wasn't practical to live strictly by set rules, so you had to make a trade-off in judgments in order to make the developer able to do what he had to do and still protect the city.
That's basically true. I mean, the function there was not to stop progress or growth. It's really to make sure it's controlled to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
And as we developed a contract, we actually wrote a contract with the developer, between the city and developer, called it is the development agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, we actually stipulated certain conditions that were to be met by the developer, things that they would be offered to the city, and in return, he was allowed certain flexibilities. In other words, particularly in housing, if a single family he had some options to single family, some denser buildings like condominiums or patio homes.
Yeah.
All those are already in our ordinances. It just allowed him flexibility in where he could locate them, and those were all in demand from the citizens of Tega Cay anyway. So,
from a practical point of view, it almost had to happen in order for it to be a viable arrangement between the city and the developer. Right?
I would think that of all the options presented to somebody that was going to develop property of this size, yes, it was the most practical, because it gave some protection to the city and what was expected of that developer, and in return it was a working relationship, and that's basically what it is today.
And now that you have the development agreement, and what sort of things will you do in relation to the development as it goes on?
Well, our basic duties, I guess, for the Planning Commission right now, we've already established the zoning. In the planning, in the development agreement, it stipulates underlying zoning, which we put in. In other words, we didn't want him to come in and build to a certain density that we didn't think should be there. I mean, we had an overall look at it at the beginning, but we have underlying designations for our zoning that he's to comply with. Basically, we're an advisory capacity to the council in all aspects of our work. We approve, disapprove with reason, and make recommendations to the council. If one of the biggest areas, of course this falls into it, is subdivision request or development of new land. So they come forward to us through a systematic process whereby we review their plans for the development. And basically they can have an abbreviated process or a three-step, which is a more longer process, where it starts out with a simple sketch with some criteria, and then it develops into a preliminary, what they call preliminary plan approval, which is more detailed, and then once that is approved and meets all the guidelines, and when I say guidelines in our ordinances, I'm referring to street designs, emergency preparedness, fire, rescue type facilities, transportation studies,
Yeah.
traffic situations, even the view and then preservation of historic. There's a lot of those issues come into play, but really when the preliminary plat is granted, it allows him to begin work, and during the course of that work, then they can establish permanent lines that are going to be there as recorded on a plat or a deed when they finish.
So this is a means of you're making sure that he's complying with all the rules and regulations. As you approve these plats, then you're looking into whether the things he's doing are right or not. Is that-
Absolutely. We still have that is our function to, and it doesn't even have to go to council. We can disapprove things during any part of that process.
No, well, it would be cumbersome if you had to go to the council for all of these things, wouldn't it?
Yes, and they don't need to be bothered with that kind of stuff anyway.
Yeah.
They're dealing basically with writing the laws, and we help them write them as well. We recommend language for any situation as well for them to. They're the governing body, so.
Yeah. Well, you've given me a good insight into what you do and what you're up to, and this recent change, making you a planning commission. That's a major change, isn't it?
I think it is. This act gave us, and a lot of people don't really know this about looking into the actual law, but we had a little training guide years ago before this thing ever started. There's certain powers that are enacted on the planning commission now to make it a stronger body, I think. We have some flexibility. We've looked at other issues that are going to have an impact in the long run. That's really our job. We need to look. We're a visionary type unit. We have to look above and beyond the growth of the city. We look at extraterritorial jurisdiction to see what's controlling the events outside of our entrance here, because it's going to have an effect on us, and it already has. Overlay zoning is another. We've been granted certain tools we can use in that process, but it certainly does clarify perhaps what the community needs to know as far as important things, as historical things like that.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for giving me your time to describe what function you do. It's absolutely an essential function for a well-run city, and I know it takes a lot of work, and thank you for that, and also for giving you time for this interview.
Well, you're very welcome. I just hope we have many more years here in beautiful Tega Cay, and as soon as this thing is filled up, maybe we can all relax a little bit.
Right. This is Tim Gillette, who is the horticulturist for the city of Tega Cay, and he's been in Tega Cay since 1988 when he was hired. Tim, would you tell me something about when you came, what your background was before you came to Tega Cay?
Well, before I started to come down south, I was a northerner.
Yeah.
I have a forest science degree from Penn State, and I worked at the Bartlett Research Laboratory for several years before I was hired over here.
Mm-hmm. You were a graduate of Penn State University, though.
Right, in Pennsylvania.
And your degree was in what?
Forest science.
Forest science. Okay.
Forest science, right.
Yeah. And then you worked for Bartlett Tree Company, and then
At the research labs, yes, sir.
and then you came here.
Mm-hmm.
When you were hired here, what was the most important task that you had to face with regard to Tega Cay, the horticulture part of Tega Cay?
Well, basically, they had started the widening of Tega Cay Drive, and they cut down all the trees and needed somebody to help put them back. And I was the guy.
Yeah. So you were the responsible agent for the city of Tega Cay for this purpose. And
Right.
how about tell me something about this planting project? The trees went the full length, or in the median of the full length of Tega Cay on Tega Cay Drive. And
Right.
and tell me something about the assistance that you had and the technical help that you got in the process of getting the tree planting project completed.
Well, we had a landscape architect to begin with. First thing we had to do was make a map, an accurate map of Tega Cay Drive. The state maps that they used were not accurate from what they drew and what they did. So we had to come up with some new maps of the medians and the road, and then we had to deal with the state highway department as far as permitting the landscape project and choosing trees that they would accept. And then once we got all that squared away, we went and looked at trees and picked out trees at the nursery, different nurseries around, and had them delivered and planted.
You had some technical help with you from time to time, didn't you, in the process of determining what trees would be planted, or did you?
No, not really. Just the landscape architect.
The landscape
myself,
architect.
and
Yeah,
they did all the drawing and everything. They did some suggesting of things, and I would say yay or nay or whatever.
So
we ended up with what you see.
Yeah, so
today.
you picked out the trees after all has been done. You picked out the trees and ordered them, and
Well, pretty much. There wasn't a whole lot of trees that we could pick according to the state list. The state list was very narrow. They didn't want big trees in there because of safety hazard, and they wanted trees that would break off easy if a car hit them, and trees that would only get so tall, or this and that. And there was all kind of stipulations we had to go through to pick certain tree shrub species.
so you didn't really have a free hand. You had a lot of pretty tight guidelines. And
Yeah, but I think we came up with a good end product where we're not having a monoculture, and we have several different species, and each turn around Tega Cay Drive reveals some other kind of tree, and it turns out to be a nice effect.
yeah, you got the money from several sources, didn't you?
Well, there was they had a fundraiser for the revegetation project on Tega Cay Drive. They also had a donation tree fund. People could donate to it, and the city also put in some money. And the developer at the time helped out with, I think, a little bit of money, and he helped out by bringing a crew down and helping with the installation of most of the trees.
Yeah. Looking at the project today, it looks like it was a very successful project that certainly adds to the beauty of Tega Cay. After the planting was done, and you worked, there were other projects, you were the city horticulturist, but what did this entail? I mean, what were some of the projects that you worked on afterwards?
Well, we worked on shaping up some of the parks and establishing shrub beds and pruning trees, and just getting things looking more presentable again.
Yeah.
As far as basically nobody had ever really worked in the parks and on city grounds in that capacity before, so we're pretty much starting from scratch in a lot of areas.
You worked with the Beautification, Conservation and Advisory Committee in that regard, didn't you? You being a member of the committee and the major advisor to them.
Right, we kind of go hand in hand. They would suggest things, and we would bandy about certain things and projects and get them squared away as far as plant material and how it would get implemented and get them installed. And it worked out real well with them being my steering committee, you might say.
Yes. Yeah, just having been on that committee, I think we worked very well as a team. Well, tell me some of the names of some of the parks and areas that you worked on.
Well, when I first come here, there was about there was 5 major parks. Rundy Field was the athletic field. It was 2 baseball fields at the time and a teen center, and that was it. It was in pretty much, besides that, it was wooded. Since then, we've put in a large planting on the bank, and we've added soccer fields. We've added a pavilion, a walking trail around the whole park, a bunch of different shrub beds and things put in with a playground.
Mm-hmm.
We had Pitcairn Park, which was pretty much a boat ramp, and that's all it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's got a nature trail and a garden and play things and overlooks and a dock. It looks really good right now. Diamond Head and Koala were, well, Diamond Head Park on Marquesas was probably the most taken care of one. There was a lot of concerned residents in that area, and they had been taking care of that park. It had some plantings in it and a few other things, and that was where one of our first Arbor Days was out in that park. There's some maple trees out there. Koala Park has just been a big wild area until Hugo came through and took out half of the trees that were in there and cleaned it out a little bit. So we ended up putting a gazebo and a playground and a trail over there.
Yeah,
Big beds.
Yeah, Hugo came through in '89, so it was in the '90s when you did this
Right.
On Koala Park. Then you had some other special areas that weren't parks. Well, you go ahead and finish it. You had Windjammer
Yeah,
project too.
we still had, Windjammer was still, even back then, was our most used park. It's our major waterfront park, and we did have a large cliff, and it was mostly wooded. Since then, we've added an irrigation system, and we've terraced the point and reclaimed some of our land from the lake, and made it a nicer view and a usable area from what it used to be.
Yeah, several years ago it was shaved down, and to me it looks like it was more usable, a lot more usable than it was before.
Yeah, but I liked it because it was more wild before.
Yeah, that's
It's more natural.
Typical tree man.
Right.
Each tree is a treasure. Then there were certain areas such as on Manila Bay and Marquesas, I think, that you worked on.
Well, that was just an erosion problem pretty much from all the construction that went on down on Marquesas. Everybody parked their equipment there. And through some of the residents and myself, we got together and made a plan and put some trees in and some shrubs and cleaned up the median and got that together. We put an irrigation system in, and then we finally got some grass growing on the opposite hill and put some shrubs around, and it's looking real good now.
Yeah, and then one of your better ones, I think, was in Point Clear, wasn't it? In Point Clear.
That's been I think our most successful garden is right there at the circle at Point Clear. It's got a big shrub and perennial bed and a large mulched area underneath a bunch of trees with some grass in between. That design has come a long way from the first people that wanted just to put azaleas out there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
turned out a whole different thing, but I think it's really nice.
Yeah. People, visitors who've come to my house during the years, and they've commented on the overall improvement, great improvement of Tega Cay. One of the latter ones that you've been working on, I think, is the walking trail that was put in a couple of years ago.
Right.
You.
We had a grant from the South Carolina Forestry Commission from the U.S. Forest Service to replant some trees on that pedestrian pathway, and we planted 30-some trees out there last March, and we've been planting shrubs, and we put in 2 entranceways with a bunch of boulders, and it's starting to take shape as far as being revegetated again after all the construction of the trail.
Yeah, yeah, it really does look great, and this past spring, I think you moved some azaleas from around the firehouse.
Yeah, those were azaleas that were moved from Tega Cay Drive during the construction project and put there by the fire department. Now the fire department is expanding and we had to move them, so we've got a large bank of azaleas on the Tega Cay Drive now.
Now, in addition to the horticulture duties you described, you're also responsible for enforcing the tree ordinance, aren't you?
Well, several years back I was in conjunction with the horticulturist, the code enforcement officer, for several years, and since I've been here, we've implemented a tree ordinance to comply with our Tree City USA requirements, and I kind of enforce that ordinance as far as requiring people to get tree permits for cutting of trees over 4 inches in diameter, and regulating planting and such on public property.
Yeah. Well, you got a full-time job, and I appreciate your giving me your time to describe what it is you've accomplished. You've accomplished an awful lot. I've been here about the same length of time as you have, and I've watched it, and it's been a very great improvement over what it was when both of us arrived here in '88, I guess it was.
Right, yeah, it's come a long way, and I might get a lot of the credit, but there's a lot of volunteers in this city that have helped me along the way, and there's no way I could have done it without them.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Tim. This is Trudy Wartley. She has been a longtime resident of Tega Cay. She came here in approximately 1975, and she has been involved in the Beautification Committee, the BCAC, the Beautification Conservation and Advisory Committee, Tega Cay, right from its inception. As a matter of fact, Trudy was the one who organized this committee. And Trudy, would you tell me just why the BCAC, or the Beautification Committee, was organized? What were the circumstances when it was organized?
Well, we actually started after the program for the Tega Cay Drive had been decided by City Council, and all the people in Tega Cay, including Trudy, were very concerned about losing the medium in the trees and wanted everything preserved and conserved. So that's actually how we started.
This Tega Cay Drive project involved the changing of the Tega Cay Drive from 2 to 4 lanes. Is that the idea? And so this is when you saw the need for the BCAC.
The topography was to be changed, and the median was going to be decreased in size, and we were not assured the trees were going to be saved. And 2, there were many shrubs in there that we felt like that might be savable and could be used elsewhere because the parks needed them. Had beautiful ivies and all. And it seems that the more I inquired around town, no one thought it was feasible, that it would be cheaper just to go ahead and do away with what was there. But the day that I left home and went out to Tega Cay Drive and saw them digging up the medium on Windjammer and throwing it in the dump truck to take it off to dump it in the landfills or the green boxes, whatever, I just couldn't stand it.
Sort of tore at your heart, eh?
Oh, my heart bled. It truly did. And I thought, it's time for action around here.
Yeah. So the action being to try to preserve some of the beauty that was there.
Yeah.
You knew you couldn't preserve all the trees, or any of the trees, I guess.
Right.
So the first object was to preserve as much of the beauty as you could. I understand that some of the azaleas that later appeared at the fire station and are now back on Tega Cay Drive were some that you preserved. Is that?
That's exactly right.
And they, and it really was a worthwhile project. I mean, here, this many years later, here it is, 1999, and you're going back to the 1980s, and you took these azaleas and you moved them around, and they provide great beauty this spring on Tega Cay Drive. So that's just a symbol of the things that you did.
And I might add that the halls had a great part in that program because Wayne Hall replanted those azaleas at the fire department, and to be sure that they would survive.
Yeah.
And they were done properly. And they did survive, and they had given a lot of joy.
Yes.
Those were the original garden club azaleas at the fire department.
Yeah. Then I guess then you turned towards something to do about the trees that were being removed. But tell me just a little bit about the change in topography before we get to the trees itself. Tega Cay Drive was changed remarkably, I know, and the level of the road was changed too, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It more or less meandered in, and everybody wanted the roads improved, and but yet no one wanted the beauty disturbed. And
You had quite a compromise you had to meet there.
it's true.
And but I understand that somewhere around Windjammer, the road did go up high, and they had to make a big cut in order to get the road level, and so there was a big topographical change there, and it left a red bank, which the Beautification Committee later on took care of. But so there were changes in the topography, as well as just ripping up things. Now,
And the medium itself was reduced to 3 to 15 feet in different places, so it decreased considerably in size. That had to be done.
so the median was decreased, but and the trees destroyed, weren't they? Or what?
Yes.
The
In the end, we were encouraged by City Council to try to preserve only the hardwoods. And the pines, when they began to trim on the pines and all, it was obvious there was no way in the world that pines could survive if they remained. So everybody consented for the pines to go, and they went. We were able to save the 2 hardwoods that are at the entrance, and that we're proud of.
Yeah. Then you knew you had a big tree replacement project on the hand, and then it was a matter of fundraising, wasn't it?
Oh, well, lots of things to be done, yeah. The money had to come from somewhere. We knew the city could not furnish it all, because if it did, our taxes would go up and all that. So we started really thinking about it. And I suppose one of the good things that came from the road was our city spoof and the camaraderie that was created there. Laurel Whitke was invited to try to...
Was he the master of ceremonies at the spoof? I mean, I know.
No, that was Henry Elridge was at the spoof. Henry Elridge was the master, and Susan Sartoris was the one that directed it. And there were many, many people involved. I think there were actually 78 people in the cast.
Wow.
And the script was original, and the credits went to many, many people. No one was invited to do anything that they said no. They just did it.
Yeah. So you had the spoof, and that was and in the process that people contributed money, which would go towards the replacement of the tree project.
Yes, we had that's where what Whitke helped us with, unify to beautify. And we started collecting, and everyone's that made a collection, a donation, their name would be registered in our book at City Hall. and a plaque would be made for those of the larger gifts, $100 or more. And so that program grew. And then we had, well, I don't know if you would call it a farmer's market or what, but we had 2 market sales up at the intersection of on Gold Hill in 161.
Was
And
this-
we raised some money there.
Was this sort of like a flea market thing?
Absolutely,
That's-
absolutely.
So-
And the Lords did that, were chairman of that, and they did a terrific job, so we made some monies there too.
There are a lot of people involved in these various projects, and I know you were very successful in the long run, because when I came here in 1988, the program had been completed just about as far as raising funds were concerned, and so it must have been very successful. Now tell me something about as you realize that you're going to have new trees and things of that nature, and the pressures of the city growing. I think you needed some technical assistance, and you realized from the start that you needed technical assistance in the horticulture area. Tell me something about that.
Well, from the very beginning, we, in particular through Jimmy Hall's knowledge, we said we need a horticulturist, we need a horticulturist. So that was plea number 1, and it didn't take the city long to fulfill that. And we got our president, Tim, and Tim has been a godsend for the city.
So Tim Gillette
Tim Gillette.
came in, that was about 88, I guess it was.
89, I believe.
89, and he is still here, still the horticulturist, and now he has an assistant with him, but
Right.
still provide the expertise. So having, I guess he had something to do with the selection of the trees along with the state. I know the state had certain requirements, but he and the Beautification Committee itself and were responsible for picking out the trees to put in the median after it was reconstructed. Is that right?
We actually had a professional designer, and the thing got very involved with the state and all, and so they advised us just to go ahead with our city horticulturist and fulfill our needs, because we were so limited with what we could do, and they had to give us the list to select from. And we actually sent out questionnaires to the residents of Tega Cay, asking them for their input as to what they would like to see on the drive. And I think that's more or less where everyone really were more in favor of the flowering trees than they were hardwood trees. But we couldn't have the hardwood trees anymore because of the
Size?
the size and the danger involved because of it being in the middle of the road.
Oh.
And
I see this.
it was now a state road.
And there wasn't enough give.
That's right.
Well, the road project, Tega Cay was successfully completed, and then you moved on to another direction, I understand, with regard to the parks. I know you, right from the start, you realized there was a need for something to be done in the parks. Tell me a little bit about that, would you?
Yes, as I said in the beginning, we were very much concerned about preserving and working with what was natural and what we already had. And there was a lot of erosion in Tega Cay, naturally, because of the topography. And one of the first projects that we had was with the help of Stan Fisher. And
Stan was a city councilman.
he was at that time, but he later was. I don't believe it was during that time that he was city councilman. But with his background now, he was very capable, and Stan was interested in Tega Cay's grounds from the moment he arrived, as long as he was alive, and we'll always remember Stan for that. But he helped us, and his concept was to get the cross ties and some planting done in Koala Park. So that's where we started.
And then you worked from there into Diamond Head and the other areas. I noticed that Windjammer has a number of cross ties too, or had a lot of cross ties.
You're right.
Was that
Right.
part of Stan's
That was
work?
that was a part of the program,
Yeah.
right?
So then Hurricane Hugo came along, and there was a lot of devastation, and there weren't very many funds coming from the city at that time, because the money was all going to recovering from Hurricane Hugo. Hugo came in September 23rd in 1989. And now after the place was cleared a little bit, tell me a little bit about the program that followed Hugo, when funds then became available from the city to help enhance the parks in various places.
Well, the Beautification Committee had extended its desires and wishes and wanted to promote more about the city and to continue to conserve, but they also wanted to beautify. And we started, well, I guess the city had one cleanup, but we initiated the annual spring cleans, and in the very beginning, we had 2 a year, and we did those. And there was something else that I...
Yeah.
But then eventually, we were very much interested in becoming a tree city. And to have a tree city, one of the qualifications was to have a tree committee. So a tree committee was formed within the Beautification Committee. And that committee has been very, very active and has fulfilled many, many needs. There, the original plans were originated, and the funds were asked, or a part of the budget was presented for the city council, and the future planning was actually done, and it has gone in that direction. And I would like to give Phil Glennon the credit for that, because he is very, very devoted to it.
Well, you're very generous. I'm Phil Glennon behind the camera, and it was really a team effort. Trudy convinced me that there was a need for planning, and since I had been a professional planner, it was very easy for me to step into that job. But we worked as a group, and everything that we did in the planning was approved by the Tree Planning Committee and the Beautification Committee and the Parks and Rec Committee. And it was really a joy to work with a good team like that. And I think the city has the appearance of the city has been enhanced because of all of these efforts of the tree planting, the cleanup, the enhancement of the parks, and so I think the city has benefited because of the way the Beautification Committee as a unit has performed its function. Trudy, I think that you started something way back in 1986, which was very good. I'm sure you had a vision that something good would come out of this group that you organized, but I suspect that you didn't think it would be quite as successful as it was.
Well, I had mixed emotions. I did doubt the possibilities of what we could achieve in the end, but the one thing about Tega Cay is the people.
Yeah.
And everybody personally cared And I think the energies of all the people that have participated in the program deserve the credit, not Trudy. But it has been truly unity to beautify.
Thank you very much, Trudy. You give me a good insight into the history of Tega Cay's Beautification Committee.
Very welcome. My pleasure.
This is Betty Loftton, who came to Tega Cay in 1976, and she organized the garden club in 1978 and was the second president of the garden club. Betty, would you tell me how the garden club came into existence?
When we moved to Tega Cay in August, I went to my first ladies' luncheon group in September. And Bev Emler was president, and of course Tega Cay was quite young at the time, and there were no organizations there. And she asked if anyone there would like to see a garden club, a craft club, any sort of club, to put it down on a piece of paper and handed it to her. Well, I wrote down garden club, not knowing that she was going to call me in a couple of days and say, okay, you want a garden club, you're in charge. So I thought, well, I did this to myself, so here we go. And I called Jenna Holland, who had a great interest in plants and gardening. So we got together in, I guess it was January, and went over a few things. We called some people to find out about an interest, and we had our first meeting.
Okay.
At our first meeting, we had 11 people to come. And I'll give you some of their names: Diana Green, Marilyn Gully, Jenna Holland, Peggy Kelly, Karen Lordo, Vicki Luguire, Beth Morris, Alice Sowden, Barbara Spencer, and Blanche Wilson, and myself. Of course, we being a new group, we had to come up with ideas of what we wanted to do, what we wanted to accomplish. And of course, one of the first things we had to do was come up with some bylaws. Jenna and I set out to get books from various garden clubs. I had a couple, she got some from some clubs in Charlotte, trying to see what sort of programs they had and what their bylaws were like. And of course, bylaws for one garden club might not suit us, so we would put these together. And we had some members who volunteered to work on this. And this was one of the biggest things that came about from the very beginning, was trying to please everybody with bylaws. And so we got that accomplished.
That's a monumental accomplishment.
It really is.
I mean, when you get a group of people and trying to get them to agree.
Exactly. And finally that was accomplished by May. And we had decided that our club meetings would be from September until May. So we disbanded in May, and knowing that we would start back in September, and this would give us a little while to come up with some things. Mm-hmm. We did decide we would meet the second Monday of each month.
That continued on, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
On the second Monday. I know in the 90s when my wife Barbara was a member of the club, it was on the second Monday.
And it still is, I think.
Yeah.
We came up with a little book, and we decided to have a little book that we could just stick in our purse. And that was another big thing, was getting everybody to decide on what kind of book we were going to use. And Barbara Spencer did our first book with this little drawing on it. And this...
So that's a hat and so forth.
Gardening gloves and some flowers. Mm-hmm. And we used this, well, until probably 1990, but we had it in a little book that was similar to this. Uh-huh. Now, our dues were $5, and of course you have to remember we were starting out and we were poor, we didn't have any money. So the $5 covered the cost of this little book to begin with. And this was a precious little book to all of us, but it had everything in it that we needed. And we just thought it was special.
Yeah, I mean, and $5 is right, it's not very much. So then you had some fundraisers that you had to
Yes, we did.
promote, didn't you?
At that time, Jean O'Keefe was in charge of a craft show that was held at the clubhouse there in the big Tega Cay room. She had this every spring, and I'm thinking it was maybe March or April. And so we paid $5 to have a booth.
Yeah.
And people brought plants. We bought plants to sell and used some of this money. Of course, we had to put it back and save it, but we were going to beautify Tega Cay, or to use it for beautification.
Good start.
Right.
And so then you got the money from this, and there were several other things you did, weren't there, as time went on?
Yes. We
As far as fundraising is concerned, you did. When did you start on the fashion show? Was that later on?
I'm thinking that was a couple years later. We had the fashion show again there in Tega Cay, in the big Tega Cay room, and that seemed to be a big success. I think everybody likes new fashions, and so you know, people came to that, and I think we made like $300 or $400 off of that.
I guess you'd get some person who was selling clothing to come and sponsor it, and then the garden club members would participate. Is that?
Well, we had someone in the club who was responsible for making sure that everything went the way it should. She was responsible for securing a store to furnish the fashions. And the first one that we had was from the Strawberry here in Rock Hill, which is no longer in existence. And then we also had another shop that came in, Prim and Proper, and she did lingerie, which they liked very much. And it was a big success, and we did that for probably 3 or 4 years. And it is still done today. And another thing that we did that was a big success too, and really raised a lot of money, was we had a tour of homes at Christmas.
Oh, local homes in Tega Cay?
There in Tega Cay. And people would donate their homes, and they'd spruce them up for Christmas and decorate them. And we usually had 8 to 10 homes. And people would tour the homes, and I think those tickets were like $5 to $7, and that was a big success too.
So you did have a number of fundraisers, and it continued through the years.
Oh, yes.
Now, how about tell me some of the things that you did with these funds that you accumulated, some of the projects. You got azaleas, didn't you?
Right. We had a local lady who would sell us azaleas, and then we would turn around and resell them, and then any that was left we would plant in various places in Tega Cay. Down at the fire department, it was fairly new, and the building was just there, and the grounds were not very attractive. So we raised money, bought cross ties, and did landscaping there, and planted bulbs and used some of the azaleas around the firehouse. We also landscaped, if you want to put it that way, around the pool. In the summertime, we bought big barrels, planted flowers in those, had hanging baskets hanging around, and you know, this just made it a little bit prettier.
And then you got some, didn't you get some boxes around the club on the railing?
In the clubhouse today, when you come into the entrance there, if you look at the stone wall, there's wooden boxes hanging right under the windows, and there's green plants in there, and the garden club was responsible for putting those in. We also had big hanging baskets in the Tega Cay room and over in the golfers lounge in front of the windows. And each of the garden club members signed up to water those and take care of them. We also had some big floor plants
Yeah.
on the floor that we took care of.
At some point in time, I understand that you took over the police station after it came into existence, and as far as landscape was concerned.
Right, we did. We felt like that we needed some place that we could call our own and say, this is what we're responsible for. And so the police station graciously let us have their land.
And they profited by it too. I mean,
Right.
the police station being such a prominent place when you come into Tega Cay, and it's important that people get a good first impression.
Well, we are responsible for the plants, and there's a little plaque up there. I wish it were bigger, but it says something about gardening on the Cay, project of gardening on the Cay,
Yeah.
which I think, like you say, that's one of the first things you see when you come in. Also, we started the Yard of the Month shortly after we organized, and John Wordle made the big plaques that we put in people's yards, and we had one for the golf course, one for waterfront, and one for the interior.
Yeah. It's a great incentive for people coming to Tega Cay. I mean, when they're recognized, it spurs them on. It not only does it spur them on, but the neighbors see it and it spurs them on, and it's a real good means of beautifying Tega Cay as a whole.
Right.
So.
Another project that we used some of our money for too was we decorated Brattonsville at Christmas time, and this was a good learning experience for people because we learned to use natural foliage to decorate at Christmas time. You could not have anything artificial. You had to have the natural.
And the people at Brattonsville had to approve of what you were putting in.
Exactly.
So it had to be authentic. Now, as time went on into the 80s, you were putting out information bulletins too, weren't you?
Right.
To provide gardening information.
We had one member who, well, more than one, there were several, that was interested in this master's gardening. I think that's what they called it. And when you took this course, and it was through, I believe, the agricultural department over in New York, you came out of this course, you were supposed to know everything about gardening.
Of course you didn't.
And so...
I can say that because I saw one of those bulletins that my wife brought home, Barbara brought home, and I took the course, and I took it, and I know I came out smarter, but I didn't know a lot. But I knew a lot more than I used to.
Well, I think in the 80s and 90s that the Garden Club did take a different direction. And, you know, they put out a lot of these bulletins, which were very informative. In fact, I was looking through some last night, and there was some on water, the lily gardens, and all these bulletins on shrubberies and that kind of stuff, which is, it's very informative.
Yeah, I know. I used to read them, and it also told what plants you should put in at what time and what you should do by the month. For instance, November, start raking the leaves up.
Right.
I remember that man's job.
Well, in our little yearbook, not only did we have the programs listed and members and bylaws and this, we always had a tip every month on what you should do at this month. You know, break off your garden, rake your leaves, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we got those out of, I think, Southern Living magazine.
Yeah. But towards the end of the 80s, you sort of, some of your members became members of the Beautification, Conservation, and Advisory Committee too. Some of the active very active ones, the ones that really wanted to dig and do things like that. So I guess the garden club sort of split in their missions a little bit. And the garden club itself continued on fundraising, I understand.
Right.
And
Well, when we first started, we did want to be a working garden club, meaning that we would dig and plant.
mhm.
And there was so much that really needed to be done in Tega Cay that there was no way that the garden club could do all of this, because there were women in this club that worked, and it was obvious they could not work during the day in Tega Cay. So I was so glad to see that the Beautification Committee did start, and this is, I think, is where the new direction came about. And of course, a lot of the older members in the garden club switched over to the beautification, and nothing wrong with that.
No. Yes, they spawned another organization.
Right. And the garden club now, of course, they still have their garden show, I mean their fashion show, and they donate funds for and have fundraisers for projects in Tega Cay.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the some of the donations are going to the current project of beautification, which is enhancing the section opposite Riley Lane going down Tega Cay Drive. And some of those funds came directly from the garden club. So they are being used for beautification projects, and even though many of the garden club people are not putting the plants in, they're providing the funds so they can be put in.
Well, one of the last club meetings that I went to, when the secretary read off the amount of money that we had in the treasurer, I thought, ooh, that's a whole lot more than we had the first couple of meetings we had.
So the garden club through the years has really done a great job, and served great purpose and helped Tega Cay tremendously. And I know it must be a source of pride to you to know that you were there when it was started.
Well, I cannot take all the credit, because we had some good members and some hard-working members, and we all worked together, and there's a lot of people that deserve a lot of credit for that.
Thank you very much. Now that we've seen the history, seen and heard the history of Tega Cay as seen by the video camera, I want to thank all of those who agreed to participate in this documentary. It took their time, and I appreciate that. I want to thank the city of Tega Cay, who supported this project. The property, of course, belongs to them, but it's been my pleasure to do it, to do the videotaping. I would also like to thank some of those who helped me, particularly Jack Gwynn, who took time to fly me around Tega Cay by air, so they take pictures of Tega Cay in that location. I'd like to thank Frank Bateman, who has spent so many hours helping to edit these tapes. Also, I'd like to thank my wife, who did some of the narrating and some of the videotaping and bore with me through this process, which has gone on for about 5 or 6 months. I'm not sure exactly how this tape will be distributed, but that is up to the city of Tega Cay. I will say that for my part, I do have sections of this long tape, and they will be available providing the city approves it in small sections, or the city of Tega Cay will provide such rules as appropriate for the distribution of this entire film. For all of you who have stayed with me through this entire filming, I want to thank you for your attention. It's been a pleasure for me to do this for the city of Tega Cay. Thank you.